In today's NHL News and Rumor Roundup, we have rumors around the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Rangers, the Winnipeg Jets, and the Anaheim Ducks. Plus, we have some news on a potential owner interested in bringing back the Arizona Coyotes. Plus, we also have news on a Flyers goaltending prospect. We have a couple of signings, including Alex Nylander and Kirill Marchenko. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a fair bit of NHL news and some trade talk to take a look at here today. Had a couple more signings today. It's been a busy weekend here for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Today they come to terms with another restricted free agent. This time it was Kirill Marchenko. We saw him sign Kent Johnson yesterday. And of course, besides the Johnson signing, we saw the news about Patrick Laine being cleared from the NHL Player Assistance Program. And trade talks certainly heating up around that young forward. Of course, Laine is a hot topic right now and expected to be moved sometime here once the Jackets can find a proper deal to move him along. Of course, both sides seem to want to get the player a fresh start. But Marchenko's contract today comes in at 3 years with an average annual value of $3.85 million. So like the Johnson deal, I think this is a pretty good value. This past season, Marchenko scored 23 goals, totaling 42 points, playing in 78 games. So he's proven to be, a guy who can certainly get through the entire season, be fairly productive. The year before his first NHL campaign, he didn't play the entire year in the NHL. He did play a little bit in the American League, but he did score 21 goals in 59 games. So this guy has 44 goals over the past 2 years, not even playing an 82-game season yet. I think the ceiling for him is not anywhere near what he's done. I think he wouldn't be shocking to see him be a 25, 30 goals guy, fairly consistent. $3.85 million for somebody who can do that at a young age, that's still some pretty good value. So I think Don Waddell's done a good job with the Marchenko and Kent Johnson signings this weekend. Another real good deal there for them. Of course, we saw the news earlier, and there is a video on the channel. I thought it was interesting that we saw the signing of Alex Nylander in Toronto. Of course, we have both Nylander brothers playing in the same organization for the first time in their careers. Certainly, I'm sure something they're very excited about. The only thing is Alex Nylander's contract with Toronto is only for their American Hockey League team with the Toronto Marlies. So I believe that the main reason the Leafs have done this, because really, if you look at Nylander's body of work, and especially what he did last year during his time in Columbus, he should have been able to get at least a 1-year, 2-way deal. The fact that he didn't is surprising. But this also tells me that he probably really liked the idea of playing in Toronto, getting a chance to play in the same city as his brother. So I think that's appealing. And with the Leafs roster and cap situation, I think it's a scenario where they couldn't guarantee him a spot right out of the get-go. So to me, it's like, okay, come into our organization, go down to the Marlies, you start the year there, you kind of reprove yourself again that you have earned an NHL opportunity. Last year at the NHL level was no fluke, and that they have some question marks on their roster, and maybe early in the year they can always change that contract to a AHL 2-way deal and call him up. That's a real possibility you could see with Alex Nylander. So obviously, there's a question marks around Nick Robertson. We don't know if he's going to end up getting traded. We know he would like to be. Will he change his mind or not? Because if he doesn't and he still insists on getting moved, there is going to be an available spot in the roster there. So that could create a room for him. Or, of course, if Robertson does stay, then maybe that complicates things a little bit, both from a cap and a roster spot. They'll have to see how things go. You never know about injuries and that kind of stuff. But I would not suspect that Alex Nylander will be in the minors all year unless things just don't go well. But he's proven to be a pretty good American Hockey League player before, and more recently a decent NHL player too. So, of course, he was a high pick in the 2016 draft. It's a pretty high ceiling when he was drafted like his brother was. But of course, unfortunately, Williams realized a lot of his potential where Alex so far has not. He's 26 years old now. So we'll see if some time in Toronto with his brother might be what the doctor ordered to get his career on track. We'll have to wait and see where things go. Now, on the trade rumor front today, so we're taking a look at a few things. No, actually, Now, before we jump into the trade rumor talk, there is some news as well on a Flyers prospect, and that's one of their goalies, Alexei Kolosov, who, of course, was playing in the American Hockey League last year, one of their other Russian goalies, besides Fedotov, of course, so that came over to North America, and reportedly at the end of the year, there's speculation that he told the Flyers that he doesn't want to come back, that he wasn't real happy with how things went in the American Hockey League, playing with Lehigh Valley, wasn't getting a lot of playing time, and then there was, he said that basically he was left at the hotel a lot on his own, so we didn't really like how he was treated, and it wasn't so much that they were like mistreating him or anything like that. I just think it sounds like he felt more isolated. He's obviously a long way from home, doesn't have great English, not getting a lot of playing time, and oftentimes you're left at the hotel, you're not playing. It just wasn't a great experience for him overall. Then, of course, to see fellow Russian goalie Ivan Fedotov come in and go straight to the NHL and then get rewarded with very little games under his belt, an extension worth some good money. Obviously, just I don't think it sat well with him. I'm not saying that Fedotov wasn't a better goalie than him or anything like that. That's irrelevant. It's just, I think it's disappointing just for him, for Kolosov, to see how this played out and just didn't work out the way he was hoping for. So expectation is that he very well could end up back in Russia for the coming year. We'll see. Some other news around the league as well. Of course, we know that the Arizona Coyotes, as of today, no longer exist, and the rights to that name is now held by the NHL after former owner Alex Muriel, bailing on that process to get a new arena not long after he sold the team to Utah. Then, of course, had the big auction, and that whole thing kind of blew up in his face, and he bailed. We know the whole background on that. And at this point, if Arizona is ever going to have another NHL hockey team, it's going to have to be as an expansion team, which would have been same for Muriel too. But they need to find new ownership. They need to overcome a lot of obstacles when it comes to getting the arena sorted. And the NHL, of course, right now will still, they hold all the copyright stuff for all the names and rights and all that stuff, and they obviously can transfer that to the new owner once there is one down the road. But Phoenix Sun owner Matt Ishbia apparently told Sportico that he is quite looking forward to the team returning someday. He sees it as a four-sport state, and is seems interested to be involved, to be part of that ownership group. Now, there were talks before that reportedly, I'm not sure if they actually happened or not, but that the previous ownership of the Coyotes had talked to him about partnering, or whether it be in an arena and all that. And to be honest, I don't know that he really was interested in working with Muriel, which was what a lot of people felt like before too. Now that he's not in the picture anymore, he seems to have a little bit more interest. He said obviously he's quite happy with their NBA arena right now for the Phoenix Suns, but obviously at some point into the future that they're going to need a new arena. And it just kind of made it sound like maybe they could partner together. No guarantee that he would want to be the main owner, like the majority owner. Maybe he's not an owner at all. Maybe he just partners with new owners on an arena. Hard to say, but it just sounds like he's interested in, of course, having the team return. He's very interested in supporting it in some capacity. And the fact that he's a deep-pocketed sports owner certainly helps. And whether or not he turns out to be the future potential owner, we don't know. But the fact that he's on board with the idea, likes the concept, and is willing to support the idea is a big step forward. But like we said before, for Coyotes fans, don't get too excited. This is going to be a long, drawn-out process. Just because he's interested and was sounding very supportive of the concept doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to overcome. They still have a lot of arena issues that they need to overcome, and really, I do think somebody can overcome them. A lot of it was Mariulo's, lack of knowledge when it comes to dealing with the local, lack of knowledge and the whole thing about how to go about getting the arena for one, but a lot of it's just dealing with the local aspect and the politicians and just what you got to do. He's not good with people. At the end of the day, his people skills and his skills that way, negotiating skills, to me, just not really good, and he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So, at the end of the day, a lot of people did not want to work with him, and now that he's out of the picture, maybe they'll come back. So this is a positive story. But again, like I said, lots of things to overcome when it comes to the arena, and we don't have an official call for expansion yet by the NHL. So it's still likely going to be in an extended number of years. But the fact that somebody like this is interested is a positive sign. And we'll just kind of leave it at that for today. The trade talk for today, we want to take a look at a few things. One, there's an article in The Athletic, Eric Stevens, had a mailbag type article looking at a couple of their prominent names that have been on the rumor mill. One, including goalie John Gibson, basically was asked a question by a fan. Why has he not been traded? What is holding up Gibson being dealt? It seems like it's basically been more than a year, probably closer to a year and a half, 2 years that he's been in the rumor mill. And the answer was essentially that he believes that the Ducks and Pat Verbeek are reluctant to retain money. So that's not helping matters. At the same time, Verbeek has not found a deal that he's happy with. At the end of the day, he's the manager. He's not going to pull the trigger if he's not happy. I mean, Gibson does have 3 more years still at $6.4 million. So it feels like when this talk all started, he had like 5 years left. He's down to 3. The longer this goes, the easier it'll get at some point. But, it's still not going to be easy. There's still a lot of money and a lot of term for a team to choke down for a goalie who, you could say has a lot of skill, but is now a little bit older and hasn't had the greatest track record the past couple of years. There was a time, I think, early in that Ducks, I don't want to call it rebuild, but after they were less competitive and on the downward swing here, where he was still really, really good. And he had a lot of wow moments with some awesome saves and, kind of probably helped them overachieve a little bit. But then the last few years, it's been a steady decline. Lucas Dostal has kind of stolen the net from him, in my opinion. I think he's going to be a very expensive backup here. It's going to prove tough to move him. There was reportedly some interest in the last year or two from a variety of teams. We've heard, even this past offseason, there was a lot of talk about Detroit. I don't know, I can't verify that, but there was rumors around them. We've heard about Philly, Pittsburgh in the past. At one point New Jersey, but they've seemed to all make other moves for the most part, so it's hard to really link them as still being likely landing spots. So hard to say if and when Gibson is going to eventually be dealt. But the biggest issue, according to Eric Stevens, is that they just seem very reluctant to retain money. So until they're willing to do that, nobody's even going to entertain it. You take half the money off the books and you put them at $3.2 million for a cap hit. Different story. Maybe they find something to do there. Trevor Zegras, the latest on him. Of course, Stevens says that a trade's still possible, but he also wouldn't be shocked if they go into the season and Zegras has a breakout campaign. But even if he does have a breakout campaign and the production is a lot better, we know Zegras has struggled with injuries as well. So let's say he stays healthy and has a real productive year. It still doesn't mean that management's going to see him as somebody they can win with and somebody that they want long-term on their roster as part of their solution. We know that they really seem to value the bigger, stronger players who can play that more physical style of game. Mason McTavish, case in point. And not that every single player needs to be of that mold, but when it comes to Zegras, they definitely want to see more out of him. They know the skill is there, but the problem is I think they want him to change his game a lot. And can he do that? And if not, then they're definitely going to be more likely to trade him. And then at that point, obviously, he would be, hoping a team will accept him for who he is. Because I don't know that Zegras can change his game. I'm really not sure that he can, which is why I think eventually, at some point here, a trade is probably more likely. But at the same time, a productive season would increase his value too. It would certainly bring a better return to the Ducks. I think last year was a disappointing year for Zegras, and a lot of GMs, of course, don't like to sell low, especially on players that were drafted highly and do have a decent potential. So we'll see. But yeah, obviously the fact that Zegras has basically, they haven't found a deal that they like, but he's definitely been on the market. There's no doubt. We have enough verified by enough sources. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Verbeek even confirmed they have had discussions around him, but they're, at the same time, not going to just give him away, right? They got to get what they want. The asking price is high. Teams haven't really met what they want. and so he's been reluctant to do that. But that's for Beek. He's basically Steve Yzerman 2.0, and he's going to be very patient and not make a deal till he gets what he wants. On to the New York Rangers article as well by Arthur Staple, looking at a few different things here. One, the Ryan Lindgren contract. He suspects it's going to probably end with a 1-year deal, mainly because of the fact that they have some big extensions they need to work out that are, you could say, this play a bigger, I guess you could say maybe a little bit more higher level of importance to them on a long-term basis. They got to get the Igor Shesterkin extension worked out. Alexis Lafreniere needs a extension as well, and there's others too. So clearly, they got some big money deals there that need to be worked out. And Lindgren, not that he's not valuable to them, he is, but I think signing a shorter-term deal always made sense. Like I said before, there's all rumors as well that the Rangers have some reservations about going too long with him because of the style of play. So we'll see where that goes. But he's estimating a 1-year deal in that $3.5 million or a little bit better range is probably where things are going to end up with Ryan Lindgren in New York. Talks about Kaapo Kakko. He's been in the rumor mill, somebody we've talked about. Says that he is still quite possible that he could be traded. There's no doubt that the Rangers and the players seem to be both on board with maybe getting a fresh start and moving on. But at the same time, says Chris Drury, just like we talked about with Trevor Zegras, doesn't really want to sell low, right? I mean, Kakko didn't have a good year last year. Selling too low on a high pick like that could be a case where the team, gives him away for not nearly enough. And if he finds his game elsewhere, it's going to look really bad. So they want to be careful with that. Now, Staple mentions the possibility of, a trade for a guy like Nick Ehlers. So could the Rangers be targeting another top 6 forward? That wouldn't be shocking if they were. Obviously, Kakko would have to likely be part of that deal, but it doesn't feel that he would be anywhere near enough. It's not going to move the needle enough to get a top player that can have an impact like Ehlers, is basically what he had to say. So I would suspect that, we don't know exactly what Cheveldayoff and the Jets are doing with Ehlers. We know at the end of the year, he was a player that sounded like he wanted a fresh start. It was 1 year left on his contract. We haven't really heard that anything had changed in that regard. Are they going to maybe extend him? And we know the Kakko would definitely be available. But like I said, look at what he got for PLD sending him to LA last year. Clearly, he'd be looking for, maybe not as big of a haul, but a similar type of package where maybe you get multiple assets in return to really help the team. And Kakko could be a start, but they'd have to put probably one of their younger defensemen in there. I don't know if they'd be asking for a guy like Miller or Braden Schneider. Schneider, to me, would make a ton of sense. Obviously has connections to the province of Manitoba. Good young right shot defenseman. I think that, to me, if I'm Cheveldayoff, that's probably what I'm asking for. Whether or not the Rangers do that, I don't know. But to me, that would make a lot of sense. Kakko and Schneider for Ehlers. But would Drury do that? I'm not. He might find that too much. So at the end of the day, Kakko's out there. It sounds like they have interest in Ehlers, but at the same time, it's not enough, and we don't know that they're going to get to the point where a deal is reached. In Montreal, an article came out in the last 24 hours as well from Montreal Hockey Now that was interesting, just kind of taking a look at the fact that the Habs are going to be an interesting team to watch. And this is probably more a deal for a little bit later. But they do have multiple first-round picks yet again coming up in the 2025 NHL draft. We've had a lot of draft picks in the past few years. They've picked high in the last couple. We've seen them go from, obviously, Slavkovsky to Reinbacher to Demidov. And, of course, they have lots of other players selected in the first couple rounds as well that are, still young and working their way up here through the American Hockey League and junior that are going to join their club and be options for them here and between this year and the next couple of years. So there's lots of prospects on the way for Montreal. There's no doubt about that. So they're getting to a point, in my opinion, that they don't need as many picks anymore. They've been picking high for a while. I'm not saying the rebuild's over. I don't think it is. They still have a lot of veterans that are weighing this team down and that they need to do some turnover there to make this team better. There's still lots of work to do. I think they're still another year, if not two, away from really challenging for playoffs. But at the same time, they're at a point where they can't take probably too many more prospects. Now, if they don't have a great season this year and they end up picking again in the top 10, great. But, you don't you can only have so many players, right? They're not all going to be able to be Montreal Canadiens. Look, it's a good problem to have, right? They have a lot of defensemen right now. That's why there's been a lot of speculation they could move one or two, right? And we did see a little bit of movement there, not quite to the extent that we thought. So I do think that between training camp and the early part of the season, we're bound to see a little bit more movement in that sense. But of course, the second first rounder that they have, besides their own, is from the Calgary Flames that they picked up in the Monahan trade. Now, there's a lot of conditions on that pick, which makes it very complicated not knowing exactly what Montreal is going to end up with. But essentially, if the Flames pick is a top 10 pick, then they're not going to get that pick. They're going to get the pick that Calgary is owed from the Florida Panthers. Now, the Florida Panthers had a condition on their pick as well, that if they won the draft lottery and they end up picking first overall, then they get to keep it, right? So, there's obviously conditions there. Now, Florida very likely is going to be a playoff team. They're not even going to likely be in the lottery. So I don't think that's really a possibility. So the most likely scenario here is that Calgary probably does have a top 10 pick, and Florida probably does make the playoffs and is not a lottery team, which means Montreal gets the Panthers' first rounder. Now, that's probably going to be, I don't know, somewhere between 20 and 30. It would be my guess, right? So it's going to be a late first-round pick. That's the most likely scenario that makes sense. Unless the Flames are bad, but not bad enough to get into the top 10, what if Calgary ends up at 11 or 12 or something like that? That's a pretty good pick. A lot higher value than picking at 20 or 25 or something a lot lower that Florida could be. I mean, Florida obviously was in the Stanley Cup final the last 2 years, picking near the bottom of the first round. Now, are they going to make it to the final a third year in a row? I don't know. I to be honest, I don't know that the odds are super great. I know they're still going to be considered one of the favorites going into this year. But considering how much hockey they've played the past 2 years and how many players they've lost in free agency, I still see them being a very good team. I still see them being a playoff team. I just don't know that they're going to have another deep run just yet. I think it's going to take a little bit for them to restock and reload before they can do that. But that's early, and that's my very early thoughts on that process. But either way, like I said, the odds of Calgary being out of the top 10 are not great. I think the Flames are probably going to be, probably around, I would say that the worst case scenarios, they pick around 5 or 6. We'll see where it goes, of course. So the odds of Montreal getting the Florida pick, very, very good. So that's a very futuristic trade chip. The Montreal, basically the article here says that there's really no reason for them to keep that pick. And there's a pretty good chance that that's going to be a nice trade piece for them. Now, of course, when you see first-round picks traded, a lot of that is around adding at the deadline, making a push for playoffs. Well, we don't expect Montreal to be in that predicament for the coming season. So at the same time, we haven't really seen that big move yet with Ken Hughes picking up that top young player that everybody thought he was going to do at the 2024 draft. Now, like I said before, the fact that they got Demidov probably pump the brakes a little bit on that deal because they know he's probably coming within a year. Not that you can't have too many players. Like I said, it's a good problem to have, but I just think they decided not to rush. If the right deal wasn't there, they weren't doing it, which they probably would have done anyway. So this is another piece that they could use to really get a high-end player. If you had a first-round pick with one of those top young D that still haven't been traded, you have some forward prospects that obviously maybe you consider as well. Like, I'm just saying that this could be a piece that very likely gets traded. But not only that, but it helps them acquire a real high-end piece as part of a package. Sometimes you talk to teams, and if you offer them one or two prospects, but then you get that first rounder in there as well, that might change their mind, right? So at the end of the day, I suspect Ken Hughes will use his pick as a trade piece. I think the article makes a lot of sense, but it's probably not something we're going to see right away. It could happen during the year, though. But for something like that to happen before the season, probably not likely. But throughout the season, I can see it. And if it doesn't happen before, it could even be as close to the draft next year. But it's just the article makes some good points, so I want to bring it up here. And obviously, like I said, this is a piece that can help Montreal get a high-end player, I think, sometime in the next 12 months. So we'll see what they do. There's no rush, no pressure to make that happen, so they'll definitely take their time, but they'll have that in their back pocket when they're ready to try to make that big acquisition. So let me know your thoughts on today's news and rumors in the comment section. We'll talk further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.